Just answering questions with WebTech, answers first. An ex-Powell, British Columbia Canadian immigrant, Green Party nudist hippie activist who used to antagonize local Democrats for some reason, became a q-anon believer and began enjoying conspiracy theories. Broke into the Pelosi residence through a glass-paneled door in the rear of the house, was carrying a bag of equipment, including zip ties and other things that indicate what he was up to, was screaming, "Where's Nancy Pelosi?" and got in a struggle for a hammer at the entryway with Mr. Pelosi, and only after the police told them to drop the hammer did the bad guy refuse to do so and hit Mr. Pelosi. I wonder if the police are going to cover up the fact that they may have caused this instead of, gee, it's only a hammer, let's grab both of them and separate them. I worked as a bouncer for a while. I would say they're completely guilty of this. But the perpetrator really did attempt murder in the last second. So what do people say to try to make it to where this didn't happen? Because it does make conservatives look ridiculously bad and makes QAnon look absolutely disgustingly bad. They come up with random stories, and I'll get to them last. Next. Further back in time, in the before time, 2017, a gunman walked onto a baseball field, opened fire on people who were on the baseball field, and got into a 10-minute shootout with the police in Alexandria and the Capitol Police. And the FBI discovered this was very likely a suicide by cop incident, even though the person did have political motivations and a little hit list and all sorts of things, at least it looked like it. But the reason everybody was so guarded about coming to a conclusion is that the person was eventually figured out by the FBI to be committing suicide by cop. The people that were shot on that baseball field were all members of Congress and such. Republicans almost exclusively were fired upon. In fact, I'm sure it was only Republicans. But the GOP, well, the only reason we know the FBI came to the conclusion it was suicide by cop and not really politically motivated, at least in the last minutes of his life, he was really just doing it just to get killed, is because the GOP so strenuously objected to that conclusion that nobody heard of. They're visually, you can see people reacting to GOP people talking on camera, and you can actually have it on record where they were objecting to the FBI coming to this conclusion. Where everybody in the room was like, what? We didn't know the FBI came to that conclusion. What are you talking about? Now, this is a politically motivated attack against Republicans by someone who is ostensibly a liberal. And there's no question of it, except the FBI found evidence that it was suicide by a cop for the action. But the motivation of going after specifically Republicans was a long-standing anger towards specifically Republican politicians. And it's horrific. This is a mass murder attempt versus one person attacking Mr. Pelosi because he was trying to kill Nancy Pelosi. But someone brought this up as a what about? Okay, and then said this was not covered by anybody, it was hushed up. No, as a matter of fact, it wasn't. Everybody knows exactly what I was talking about. Some of you figured it out before I mentioned the politicians. When I said Capitol Police, some of you figured it out in 2017. Yeah, I remember that. It's one of the most infamous occurrences of politically motivated violence that we know of, and it may actually have not been. And the only reason we know it may not have been is because the GOP actively tried to cover up the FBI conclusion on that at one point. I don't believe that that conclusion is accurate, obviously. But the fact that you made me look this up makes me happy to say, yes, this is politically motivated, but it is kind of funny that the cover-up part of it is only from the GOP. Or not. Let's move on. But no, this wasn't covered up, and it was in the news, and someone saying it didn't happen or saying it was covered up is bullshit. Bowling Green, Kentucky. Renee Boucher tackled his next-door neighbor over a leaves being blown across the property line. And this was around 2017 Halloween. The person who was tackled then had part of his lung removed because 6 of his ribs were broken inward. The person who was the victim was Rand Paul. until I mention Rand Paul, there's no political motivation here. There's nothing about it that says politics was involved or ideology or beliefs. And well, why was this swept under the rug? It wasn't. It was talked about, and it's horrific. But it wasn't politically motivated, according to Rand Paul himself. At the time, or recently, or whatever, right? Well, maybe it was. Again, this is being brought up as a what about, and yeah, but the Democrats do bad things. How do you know the next door neighbor, Renee Boucher, was a Democrat? There's indications maybe that he voted for Rand Paul. They were mad at each other over leaves. This happens every fucking year. Okay, but that wasn't covered. I never heard of it because it wasn't politically motivated. Let's talk about one that was brought up as a politically motivated thing. Lanetown Road, Crozet, Virginia, 11:16 a.m. Late November 2018. An Amtrak train hit the left rear of a garbage truck that was on the tracks, stalled or whatever, between the two crossbars. Christopher Foley was killed. He was a passenger and an employee of the garbage company. The other two passengers were seriously injured, including the driver. People aboard the train reported minor injuries only to 3 train passengers and 3 Amtrak crew members. But the news story was about the fact that Republican members of Congress and their staff were aboard the train, but they reported they weren't injured. They were the headline. Also not mentioned was that the driver was accused of and then acquitted of being under the influence, it was pot, and or at fault. Pro tip. Let's do all of these so far. If someone enters your house and they're invading the house, don't stand your ground, run the fuck away, because they may not be about the house, they may be about killing you or Nancy. Especially if they scream, "Where's Nancy?" This is when you assume, this isn't a robber, this is a murderer, get the fuck out of the building. Next, if you're a cop, I'm just going to say this, stop being a little pussy and fucking tackle the bad guy a couple of times a year. Just do it twice. Y'all tackle him in the movies. But don't break the ribs. Next, I don't know why I have to say this. If your car gets stuck on a train trestle, get out. I don't care what you're about to say or do. I don't want to hear it. Put it in neutral so it can roll. Immediately. Put it in neutral. And if you know where the train's coming from, tilt if the front or the rear part is there, make it to where it's tilted so that if it's hit by the train, it'll pirouette out of the way more. Find out how to, just go learn how to do that. I was told how to do this because it was a problem, because when you go up and over a train trestle, it'll cause a vacuum effect in the fuel tank in the 1970s and 80s. We actually had to learn about that when I was learning how to drive a vehicle. I'm not kidding. I grew up in an area where we had train trestles like that, and it happened all the damn time. So the police demanded that everybody teaching people how to drive, they made you go up and over a test bump to see if your car would do it for about 4 years. I'm not kidding. This is actually a thing that happened. And you'd put check valves so that it wouldn't do that. So you'd have continuous flow of fuel. Some of you don't remember that actually became a problem with a couple of dozen models. And it happens on trucks all the time too. The only reason I know that is I was in a truck when that happened, and the first thing I was told is get out of the car. Well, and then the driver put it in neutral, opened the door, cut the seatbelt, and threw me out of the thing and said, "Run for your life, or you lose it because you're an idiot." And then kept it in neutral, and then went to whatever side was least on the tracks and started pushing. Because if the engine's not going to start, put it in neutral and just start pushing. Just don't go through A through Z. Go to step Z. Push the damn thing. You're not in the vehicle, so you can get the fuck out of the way and keep pushing. Well, I'll get in and steer. That's when you grab someone and slap them upside the head. It'll make them live longer. Don't be stupid. Someone's invaded your house, but they're yelling, "I'm here to kill XYZ." Get the fuck out of the building, especially if you're not the person they're yelling at, and call the police. Take your phone. Run. Call the police. Someone's in my house yelling that they're going to kill somebody. Where are you? Not in the house. Here's the address. Show up now. Catch the bastard. Please don't be a wuss. And then say, don't invoke the Evoldi protocol. Rub their noses in the fact that you don't assume that they're going to actually be brave. Have them show up and tackle the fucker. I don't want my head bashed in. I'm not Nancy Pelosi's husband. It's a home invasion. The person's trying to kill somebody. It's your job, not mine. Yeah, I can replace crap. Somebody smashes my computer, I'll do data recovery. That's what I did for a living for years. I can't think of a single reason I want to die. But yeah, I'm criticizing the police because they should have tackled them. I don't know what happened, neither do you. But that's my first hot take. I'm probably wrong. In fact, I'm assuming I'm wrong. Same thing with the train. Well, no, I'm not wrong on the train. If you're stuck on a train track, get out of the fucking vehicle. Yeah, but no. Oh, and by the way, did you notice the police left someone stuck in the back of a vehicle when a train was about to hit the car? Why would the police leave the car parked on the train tracks? Oh, well, who did it? All names. Line them up. See these 5 people? Or whoever it was? These are the idiots that almost got someone killed by parking on a train track. They're barred from driving for the rest of their life, and they can't be police, and they can't have firearms. And that's because they don't want to go to prison. And I wouldn't let them talk. I'd be just like, you will look at them, and they will they'll have a dunce cap on, and hold a sign with their name and address on it, so you can come to their house and egg it. Because they almost got someone killed because they're dickheads. The amount of stupid that causes these tragedies. So let's review really quickly. This wasn't a tragedy. Someone broke into someone's house to murder their wife and ended up almost murdering him. That's what happened with the guy from Canada. Politics aside, he was definitely there to kill Nancy Pelosi or beat her up or whatever. Making an excuse otherwise is bullshit. A gunman walking into a field, I don't care if the FBI came to the conclusion it was suicide by a cop. I'm going to call it politically motivated. A garbage truck being hit by a train is only significant in the news because politicians were aboard. You're not talking about basic safety of don't stay in a vehicle if you can't move off a train track. Just, why isn't anybody taught this anymore? By the way, I worked as a bouncer for a while. Why doesn't anybody do what bouncers do? Put someone in an arm lock and make them obey you. No, the cops don't do that anymore. They find some excuse to shoot you or strangle you instead of... What are you doing all that weightlifting at the fucking gym for if you're a cop? If you're not going to use it for something? Well, he overpowered us. Oh, fuck you. They had their hands on a hammer and you guys didn't pull them apart. I'm a scrawny-ass motherfucker and I can do that. What the fuck are you talking about? Pain compliance. Amtrak train hits garbage truck, therefore politicians triggered. Oh, fuck that. So someone brought all this shit up. What else did they say about the guy at 2 a.m. or whatever at Pelosi's house? Oh, he was in his underwear. I just saw no report of that. The next thing is the security wasn't present and the alarms were off. Someone's home at their house. They don't assume that they're going to get broken into. They don't need to turn this on. Maybe he was awake at the time. I don't know how to explain that either. Also, I don't know if that was actually true either. Or maybe he just didn't have an alarm plate, a plate glass breakage detector on that particular pane. Police chief said that originally it was the Mr. Pelosi who attacked him. Yeah, we saw that. Then you say, how can he change his statements? Because he was wrong and admitted it. You're objecting to him admitting that he made a mistake? Whoever believes that this was an attack aimed at Nancy must be a pervert. Now we see what you're doing. Next person points out, again, Rand Paul got his ribs broken and part of his lung removed. A Democrat shut up a baseball game. Yes, I know that. A garbage truck intercepted the train. No, that's not what happened. Then the person says, this is a spiritual battle. One side is sleeping. The other side has a spiritual cloth covering their eyes. That's your side. None of these were covered up stories in the news. They were all very much available information. But some of these stories just kind of faded because, in the case of Rand Paul, it probably wasn't politically motivated, and it was an accident that they ended up getting injured that way. The guy who did it still had to pay the medical bills and had to admit that he did something stupid. As for the rest of the stuff that I've discussed, Take your opinions if you want to. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with that. I hope I've debunked the bullshit for you today.